In the shadows of the comments section always lies the armchair historian, the man who knows everything and will always correct you when you're wrong. That's why I brought someone with a history degree so that I could play at credentialism and say that if you criticize anything my friend Nate here says, who has a history bachelor's degree, you're wrong.
I'm always right.
Because that's how the American education system works. You have a piece of paper, so you're always right.
I'm good.
So here's the thing. We are talking today about 5 different locations, settings, time periods, all of them combined that we want to see for Assassin's Creed, the franchise. We know that there have been certain places that have popped up in spin-offs and other things, which we will talk about. But before we get into it, take a breath. We'll all take a breath. It's going to be okay. It's an Assassin's Creed video.
Oh, no.
We're going to have some fun. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this, subscribe for more content. We appreciate you very, very much, as the channel has been kind of weird lately with YouTube. Your continued support is fantastic. Let's hop right into it. Number 5. The first one we have is the Mexican-American War, and you're going to say, now wait a minute. Wait a second, why are you saying that you have to play as America in every game? What is wrong with you? Why are you being nationalist? And I have this to say, you don't. What if in the Mexican-American War, you played in Mexico as an actual member of the Assassin Brotherhood branch down there? Now, here's the thing. We do know that the Caribbean Brotherhood of Assassins, also sometimes known as the West Indies Brotherhood of Assassins, was formed in the, I believe, 1700s, like very, very early 1700s. It might have been a little bit before that. But based on information in AC4, along with other stuff like that, we know that the former city of Tulum, the Mayan city, was actually used as the base of the assassins. We also know that there is a branch of those assassins there because, one, during Assassin's Creed 4, it gets really into that, right?
Yeah.
And 2, it's referenced in other games in the series. But there are different characters involved in that branch. We know that Atabai, and I hope I'm pronouncing his name right at this point.
You're probably not. Like, the armchair historian will correct you.
He will be mad. He will be mad. He had trained the assassin Walpole in this region. So that's interesting because this is the same assassin that was unknowingly killed by Edward Kenway during the events of AC4, which then led into the rest of the events of the game. You know, Edward took on his persona and his identity. He was trying to get a reward out of it. He ended up accidentally selling out part of the Brotherhood to the Templars, and then he had to fix it, you know, and he slowly became a better person over time. There's some character development there. All of this is to say, though, that we do know the assassins for sure existed in this region, so they can easily be used in a later time period, such as the Mexican-American War.
Yeah, well, and then also once later on in the game, they shift to a different headquarters area, which is on the island that Edward lives on. He uses his island for the headquarters in the area, but I think it would be pretty interesting for this time period because, you know, about 150 years later is the Mexican-American War from the events of this game. Actually, it's like 130, whatever it is. But I think it would be interesting because it would show that the Assassin Brotherhood actually grew in that 100 years and until they're actually now like a group. And you have old Rough and Ready himself invading Mexico.
That's what they call me in the locker room.
Oh, wait. That's a little bad.
It's not about me. It's not about me.
No, it's not about you. You need to stop invading people here.
I'm sorry. I do what I can. Who I can.
But no, I think it'd be interesting, you know, instead of like you just playing as America, which would be cool too. You could play as like
you advocated for America.
You could play alongside with like Jefferson Davis, which would be pretty awesome. Robert E. Lee,
also, you know, maybe
U.S. Grant, Braxton Bragg, all these people would be amazing.
Maybe you could play in the a different time period. Andrew Jackson was an assassin.
Yeah, that would be awesome. That would be cool.
Like the thing is, yes, there is a lot you could do with America on this side, but we thought that Mexico would be more interesting because you not only get to see that conflict from a side that it's not usually represented on in history, because to be honest, you usually hear about history from the victor, you know,
which is America.
So it would be interesting to hear about it from the other side. It'd be interesting to partake in different cultural I guess, practices and see the buildings, how the infrastructure was different, especially during this time. Mexico has a very rich and unique history. You can still see that, obviously, today in things like Cinco de Mayo and other events. But it would be very interesting to see that during those historical events in time that you don't normally see.
Yeah, it would be awesome. And then, you could partake in big battles like the Battle of Veracruz.
Or the
Sorry,
Battle of...
like staring at
No,
me.
I'm sorry. I thought we were going to talk about the Battle of my bulge.
Yeah.
Is that a different war?
That's a different battle. You need to
okay.
calm down, rough and ready here.
Sorry.
So, yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of different battles you can partake in. There's a lot of different areas. Like, you can explore Mexico City. A couple 100 years after it was Tenochtitlan, the capital of the Aztec Empire.
So battles you can partake in.
Right.
We've heard that one a few times. So
And,
that's what
and there's
we know
also
what you care
battles.
about.
There's also battles.
Number 4. It's the 4th one.
4.
The next one we have is China. Now,
China.
China was actually already in the one game. It was in Assassin's Creed Chronicles China. Yes. Okay, we know it was. But we want to see this in a main game, and we want to see it during the Yuan Dynasty. There's a lot of interesting places you could go during the Yuan Dynasty. Also, a ton of, I guess you would say, iconic historical figures, such as Marco Polo, and even Kublai Khan was around during this time. He is the grandson of Genghis Khan, who had obviously gone through his entire escapade throughout China.
Yeah, his Battle of the Bulge.
Which we're not really advocating for Genghis Khan here. You don't have to go in and be like, Kublai Khan is such a good man. But he's interesting because he was a leader. He was the leader during this time.
Yeah.
And he had a lot going on as well. His friendship with Marco Polo was interesting, so you could do a lot with that because Marco Polo was on his expedition to China during this time.
China.
There were also a lot of attempted rebellions too. I didn't know about this, but when researching this time period, because we did look into them, I didn't know there was unrest, I guess would be the word, in China during parts of this time, during his rule. There was an uprising in Tibet. There were other northeastern areas trying to rebel against Kublai Khan and the Yuan Dynasty. It's just interesting what you could do with this. I mean, the assassins also, while taking part in historical events, are generally more removed from them in terms of they don't usually side with someone as much as they try and preserve free will. So, I mean, you can even see that with Connor, where, I mean, yes, Connor in AC3 was a little biased, but he believed that helping the American side was, one, upholding the tenets of the Brotherhood, right? Because it was sort of overthrowing a regime, but two, also it would help his own people. So he kind of had split allegiances that were interesting on his own. But you could do a lot with things like that in China because there was always a very nationalistic identity in China. It has always been very much if you're Chinese, that's a proud thing to be.
Right.
So how would you reconcile being a Chinese assassin during this time with all this unrest and with obviously a fairly new leadership?
Yeah.
What would you do?
Yeah, well, the Yuan Dynasty is especially interesting because the Chinese people had always had a big rivalry with the Mongols from the north. And, that's why the Great Wall of China was actually built, was to try to keep out invading Mongols from raiding their villages from the north.
There's a movie about that with
Qin
Matt
Dynasty.
Damon.
Yeah, the Great Wall.
Yeah, the Matt Damon movie. That's pretty
very
accurate.
Historical accurate. But yeah, no. So they always had a rivalry with them, and then eventually with Genghis Khan, they just took over China. So that's why there was a lot of unrest in the areas because the Chinese people didn't like the Mongols. It was an invading force that they didn't like. But there's a lot of interesting stuff you can do. Something I just thought of right now, so we don't have time to look it up. So sorry if this is inaccurate or something, but in Assassin's Creed 2 and Brotherhood, remember in the tomb down underneath the castle at Monteriggioni, there's actually an assassin there that I believe assassinated Genghis Khan I believe, if I'm remembering it correctly, it's just off the top of my head, so no one like attack me.
Are you okay?
I'm trying to defend because there's a lot of like people like here with
I
like,
feel like whenever we bring
armchair analysts that attack me.
Assassin's Creed and Call of Duty for some reason are like the most polarizing topics
I know.
that make some people mad.
I know, so I'm sorry if I'm wrong.
I get the passion, but it's supposed to be fun.
But yeah, so if that is correct, there's already an established assassin in this time period that you could do something with, which I think could be very interesting. But, you know, there's a lot of different interesting areas you can go into, like just the Chinese land, if you will, is just a very interesting landscape and a lot of cool cities and stuff
again,
to explore.
to their personality as a people.
Yeah.
You know, their culture, all of those things are very interesting. And think about this. You know how you have I would say the American wilderness in 3. Not to like keep referencing 3, but the reason that I am also with this area is because it's very open like that. China, yes, it is very overpopulated now, but in general, in history, there were tons of wide open spaces. You know, you could go from a city into a rice field. You know, there's a lot of beautiful scenery and places you can go.
Yeah, or the jungle surrounding like the Yangtze River and stuff too.
Well, yeah, it's like a wide open world
Yeah.
with so many different types of landscapes and locales in one country.
Right.
So it's like you can do a lot with just that in terms of game design on its own.
Yeah, and there's like a lot of cool options, like with Marco Polo coming into China, like the invention of like fireworks. I know the Chinese people had a version of fireworks before Marco Polo came, and then they introduced him to it, who brought it over to Europe. And then that's when you got like the cannons later on. They
gunpowder.
They used gunpowder, but the Chinese people used gunpowder for stuff like fireworks. And then the Europeans kind of further developed it
And
later.
they made it into a gun.
Exactly, because that's very
That's
European
what we do.
thing. They're like, how can we turn this into a gun?
Okay, that's cool.
But
cool
I don't know,
firework, but
there's
how
like-
can I kill someone with it?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's like cool. You could use that. You could use gunpowder in like some early form of weaponry, is what I was trying to get at.
Well, kind
There's
of like the gun in AC2 and Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Just similar. Yeah, you know, the
there's
thing
cool
too.
options.
You could also use Marco Polo in a way as a similar to Leonardo da Vinci character.
Right.
Now, Leonardo is one of the most beloved characters of the Ezio games.
Right.
Sadly misused in Revelations by basically not being there. But in, 2 and Brotherhood, that's a big character. So I think that you could very easily do something like that. You don't need to just rip him off. But you could do something very interesting. Like maybe you visit Marco Polo while he's staying in China, and maybe he can help you develop something. He was very friendly with the Chinese people.
Yeah, maybe you can visit him in his like room also.
I'm good. Thank you. I've seen the Amazon special. If you're a female assassin, you maybe don't want to be friends with Marco Polo.
Okay.
Number three. Moving on, this is one of them that I'm probably the most passionate about, which is near future America. This
is America.
What's his name would say from Iron Man 3? The Mandarin.
Oh, yeah.
I couldn't think of his name. I was going to say the Mongolian, but I've been watching South Park, okay? So the thing with near future America that's interesting is I hear the people talking already. Yes, Assassin's Creed is mainly known for being historical, and people love that. Yes, I agree. It doesn't mean that every single part of the franchise has to be in the past. It would be very interesting to me, at least, and I've been hearing it from a subset of fans for years, since AC Brotherhood, to see a modern day or near future game, especially now that we have Watch Dogs. You could so easily, yes, I know, again, Watch Dogs, they are having a crossover event with Assassin's Creed, here in the near future, but with Watch Dogs, you could very easily cross these two over, because DedSec in Watch Dogs is a very interesting and similar group to the Assassin Brotherhood. They actually even have some some crossover characters as well between the two games. We know these take place in the same universe. So the thing with this too is they are trying to maintain free will and avoid a surveillance state. They're trying to protect the privacy of citizens and all this stuff. DedSec is certainly not perfect in some way, just like the Assassins could be. They could very easily probably be branded terrorists. But the thing with them is that they have similar goals to the Assassins, and we've already seen these mechanics proven in terms of a gameplay system. the mechanics for Watch Dogs were working well in Watch Dogs 1, which, by the way, as great as Assassin's Creed 1 is actually not something you can say as much about that game in terms of the overall series. Like, Assassin's Creed changed dramatically. Watch Dogs has been using the same DNA, very, very similar DNA, since the first game, where you played as Aiden Pierce, then the second game, and finally in Legion, where you can essentially play as anybody, because they moved away from Aiden Pierce, and then they moved towards an art character in 2, and then they moved to anyone in Legion. I'm not even sure if Watch Dogs will be around permanently, but the idea of being an assassin who can free run, climb full buildings in the modern day, blend into crowds with more modern day or near future tech and clothing and equipment, hack devices. Essentially, you're someone from DedSec who's an assassin.
Right.
I would love this. I mean, Aiden Pierce is already a little bit like this. I mean, I would say that in 1, at least, I would say that he is a killer. And you can play him more as a killer or more as a non-lethal character, but they've shown in Watch Dogs that you can already create this sort of world. Ubisoft is capable of it. So why not? And it's weird because they've been sort of hinting at this sort of thing for years. I mean, we had Desmond, we had the unimportant characters of the real world in like 4 and some of those other games. We had obviously now Layla.
Yeah.
So there are events happening in the like current day of the Assassin's Creed universe. Why not do an entire time period piece around that?
Yeah, that would be pretty interesting. Or if they didn't want to do like current day, they could do something near current day, like early 2000s.
Yeah.
You know, they could have you playing as like other important characters like Barack Obama.
Oh,
Donald Trump.
Barack Obama played by Ryan Gosling.
Yeah. You know, like cool, but no, there's a lot
You
of...
still could cross it over with DedSec too, even
Yeah,
if you
could.
wanted to, early 2000s. I mean, you could do something like how that came to be.
Right.
The point I wanted to get to with all of this is it's a good way to cross over these two franchises.
Right.
Why do they keep hinting at each other?
Yeah.
And why do they keep going like, hey, you know, Abstergo, that's a real thing, but this is Watch Dogs.
Right.
Or why do they go like, hey, the Assassins, let's have this character be referenced in the game, but it's Watch Dogs.
Yeah.
Why do they keep doing that?
Just make a game.
Yeah, well, even too, there is a crossover, I believe, that in Black Flag, there is this character called Olivier Garneau. I don't remember if I'm pronouncing his name right again, I'm sorry. Now, this character was actually in Black Flag's modern day section, but he then traveled to Chicago, which is where Watch Dogs 1 is set. And in Watch Dogs 1, he appears in that game as a target in a side mission.
Oh, so I actually didn't know that. That's interesting.
So this character that basically moves over from the original, you know, Assassin's Creed ends up in Watch Dogs. And actually Ubisoft had sort of called it non-canon, like on Twitter. In Origins, in Assassin's Creed Origins, they actually looked at it again and made it canonized because they showed a screenshot of Garneau in Watch Dogs during Assassin's Creed Origins. So the image can be found when browsing. By the way, I'm looking right now on Eurogamer as a source, but the image can be found when browsing the laptop in Origin's modern day section. You can find files on different Abstergo employees, including the supposed security footage of Garneau being killed. And who's the shooter? It's Aiden Pierce. They show Aiden Pierce shooting Garneau.
Oh, I actually remember seeing this.
Yeah.
I remember seeing that when I was going through the computer.
Yeah, that's Aiden Pierce.
Yeah, okay.
So
I remember seeing that.
He straight up assassinated a member of Abstergo.
Okay.
It's one of those things where it's like, you can't really argue these don't take place in the same world.
Right.
Why not just take the leap and cross them over?
Just make a whole game.
Number 2, the numero dos. The next one we have is the Roman Empire. Now, this is actually what we would call the ancient Roman Empire, even though there was a Roman Empire before this. But around 30 AD-ish, we're talking the time of Christ, essentially. This is near when he was killed, Jesus of Nazareth. But you don't even...
But Jesus is not a real person!
Well, there's historical documents that... you can argue the divinity of Christ and all that stuff, whatever you want to believe, but there are historical documents and non-believers of Christianity that back up Jesus existed. You're an idiot if you don't think that.
I'm glad
Learn history.
Out, yeah.
Learn history. Even if you're an atheist, you have to accept that Jesus of Nazareth was a human being.
Even if you're an atheist, you have to accept the Bible.
Okay, well, we have like... Did you just discover the new world here? Like, settle down. Just settle down. I don't want to get in trouble here. But the thing with this time period is it's very interesting. There is a lot of stuff going on. Obviously, Christ was crucified during this time period. You also had Christianity appearing as a offshoot of Judaism as well, which was seen as a cult by a lot of people during this time when it first started. This time period led up to another Jewish uprising later on, which was threatening Roman rule, which had been held back. And the whole point of crucifying Jesus of Nazareth was to prevent an uprising in that, actual area that was ruled by Pontius Pilate. But you had a lot more going on too. You had stuff here. Nate wrote down things about the history with Tiberius going on.
Yeah, the Roman Emperor Tiberius. So I would be really down for this era because this
You'd
was
be DTF.
I would be. This was always my favorite era of history. Actually, is the Roman Empire, the early Roman Empire. And by the way, the time period before this was called the Roman Republic, not the Roman Empire.
Epic. Sorry.
To correct you.
Well, they still basically had an empire.
Yeah, but they were a republic, actually.
Well, anyway, Republicans? Did Scott Cawthon donate to them?
They did.
I'm never buying FNAF again.
You never bought FNAF in the first place. Anyways, so... the Roman Empire was always my favorite, including like the Roman emperors. I love studying the Roman empires. There's a lot of really cool, very interesting parts they could do with an Assassin's Creed game. There's even, like, because I know Assassin's Creed always likes to have like a big assassination, right? Like you're assassinating a really big historical leader. There's actually a good one, like the Roman Emperor Tiberius, who was actually the emperor during the time of Jesus' death in this time period. In 37 AD, he was actually murdered. So I think there's a lot of interesting things they could do with this. You could have like an assassin being the one murdering him. His body was ironically actually thrown into the Tiber River as like a joke. His name like Tiberius the Tiber River.
Epic. Now that's
funny
gamer.
stuff. It
Poggers.
is very gamer.
Poggers kill, bro.
So yeah, I think there's just a lot of interesting things you could do with this time period. You could go a lot of different areas. Yes, I know you can go into Roman Brotherhood.
Yeah, but that's very late Rome.
This is a vastly different Roman area.
Well, this is the Roman Empire when they're at their height.
Right.
I would argue that when you're in the era of Brotherhood,
this is the Pax Romana era.
The Brotherhood is almost like at the low.
Right.
This is like where the Rome is kind of phasing out as the major world superpower in a way.
Right.
So that's different in on its own. You also do have the fact that with the crucifixion of Christ during this time, you have a lot going on with the Jewish people as well. With those rebellions, you have a lot going on with unrest in the region, with consolidation of power, and then, obviously a while after this, you'd start to have the persecution of Christians as well. Mm-hmm. But the thing with all of this is that there's a lot of civil unrest and different historical events going on that are very, very intriguing.
Yeah.
That it would be interesting to be walking around in the world where all of this is happening.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I highly doubt they're going to let you go stand at Gethsemane or whatever and watch Christ be
They should.
murdered.
That'd be awesome.
There's a lot that you could do with this. And like you said about Brotherhood, this is before there was really a problem with Roman rule in terms of people challenging them that mattered.
Right.
Because here's the thing. A Jewish uprising didn't matter. It was a nuisance and an annoyance. Mm-hmm. The Romans were so powerful that they could just come in and squash it immediately.
Right.
But the thing with other areas later on, like the Ottoman Empire, that was a huge problem when we're talking around the time of Brotherhood. Even in Assassin's Creed 2, there is a point where there is an Ottoman scout, I believe, trying to look around Italy, and you have to kill him.
Yeah.
To sort of hold off the Ottoman Empire a little while longer, because they're trying to scout out weaknesses in Italy, in the Roman Empire area at that time, even in Assassin's Creed 2, and then obviously much later in Revelations, we're at the point where it's essentially just the Ottoman Empire.
Right.
Rome doesn't matter nearly as much.
And also, they even kind of established Assassin's Order in this time period as well, in Origins. So in Origins, Aya...
Oh, be careful. Somebody corrected you on this one.
I know. I'm sorry, but we're saying it anyways. In Origins, Aya moved to Rome and started up the Assassin's Brotherhood. Yes, it wasn't the Brotherhood. I get that. Someone corrected me on this.
Was it the Hidden Ones?
Yes. But yes, it was not an established order at this point. Someone is in the comment caps lock on.
Well,
but...
I do remember reading a comment about that because it was that somebody else had started the official Brotherhood.
Right. Well, someone's actually the Brotherhood started in 8 or whenever it was. But it's But it's like, no. I established the beginnings of the Brotherhood, or what would become the Brotherhood, in Rome. The Roman branch of the Brotherhood.
Well, that's one of the reasons why she mattered so much.
Right. It was the beginning of the Assassin's Brotherhood. No, it was not the Assassin's Brotherhood. But there is already an established people group in here, in Rome, during this time period, that are starting up.
Number 1! Splat.
Speaking of America, the final one that we have is the American Civil War, which we're going to try to cover quickly so that this isn't a super long video.
Sorry, I went
since
off
it'll
on
already
Rome.
need to be edited down.
Sorry.
That's okay. The thing with the American Civil War, though, this is probably what Nate and I want to see the most. There's different ways to take this. Maybe you actually join the Union Brotherhood during this time, or maybe you defect to the North. Or you could even do something similar to what Rogue did. Maybe you're actually an assassin in the South the whole game, and you slowly realize that, oh, that's what's going on with this war over time. Because it's interesting, there were actually a lot of different attitudes on this war. There's going to be people in the comments probably who are from the South who have like very strong feelings about state rights being the cause of the war. There were plenty of people who fought this war for state rights, who like didn't really care either way that much for slavery. I'm not saying that's good, but I'm saying like they were more concerned with, I guess, upholding state rights versus federal government telling the states what to do.
Right.
Because the South was very independent. They saw the states essentially as independent nations held together loosely by the United States, federal government. Now, the North saw very much more the federal government as a source of power for the United States. They were in charge at the top, and then the states took second fiddle to them in a lot of ways. And there were even people in the North who saw it the opposite way, that states should be more independent, but the issue of slavery and human rights was so important that they said, you know what, I'm going to give up that power right now so that we can help. One of the things, too, that's made it controversial in history books is people saying, well, America got rid of slavery too late.
Right.
So the thing is, you could kind of tackle some of those issues, like why is it still around? How did people feel during this war? The whole idea of brother versus brother, like maybe you had a cousin down south and you're up north, and you had to fight him, but you met up on Christmas and did the uh-oh dance. No, I mean, like maybe, there was a lot of stuff like this. There are letters recovered from Civil War soldiers about like, I had to murder my cousin or something like that, or like I shot my cousin because he was in the Confederate Army and I'm in the Union.
Yeah.
There's a ton of historical strife going on during this time. And again, how does the Brotherhood interact with this time period? Because they try to separate themselves from the earthly powers, or whatever you'd say, to promote free will. So are they very much on the Union side because slavery is not, free will? Like that's very against like the assassin tenets? Or how do they handle this?
The game would be very hard to play through. Like, for example, you had Robert E. Lee, who fought in the Civil War not because he was for slavery. He had a lot of writings where he actually said he thinks slavery should be outlawed. He's not for it. He doesn't like slavery. But he fought for this Confederacy. He was actually offered the job as the lead general from the Union at the start of the Civil War. He turned it down because his home state, Virginia, voted to join the Confederacy, and he had state pride. He wanted to fight for a state. He didn't want to invade his own state, And then you have like Ulysses S. Grant, whose own father-in-law was like a Southern slave owner who hated him, and his wife was an old slave owner who changed too. Like when she met U.S. Grant, she got out of the mindset of slavery.
Well, I mean, his name is U.S. So
well, I know, exactly. He's got to be a good guy. So, I don't know, there's just a lot of emotions, and like that was kind of the big thing with the Civil War, was that it's like both sides felt they were right, and both sides had a lot of stakes in the other side as well. So it created a lot of problems, and it created a lot of mixed emotions of no matter who was going to win the war, everyone was going to lose.
It's not all 100% clear. There's some gray area here and some frustrating things, even with how history is taught, again, by the victor, of everyone in the South was a raging racist who hated everyone not like them and just loved slavery. That's not actually
not
the
accurate,
case.
actually.
There
There was
were-
a lot of people like that, but
But there were also a
There's
lot of
not.
people who were vehemently against it.
right.
Some of them who supported the state rights. And there were people living, by the way, in the South who were for the Union winning
Yes.
because they believed that slavery was so bad
Mhm.
that they were like, just, I hope the Union wins, but I don't die.
right.
You know, so that's the thing with this. Like, there were people you can bet that were living in the South. It's not like 100% of the population wanted to secede from the Union.
Right.
That's not how history works, but that's how it's taught.
hmm
So it would be very interesting to take place in a era of history that often lacks subtlety in the classroom or in historical writing. That's taught nowadays, because again, to the victor goes the spoils, and one of those spoils is teaching history.
Yeah. There's a lot of areas that we didn't even cover in this video.
We might make another one
Like-
if people like this.
Right. Right. Like the Salem witch trials.
And you play as Hawthorne, or whatever his name was. Hathorne?
Oh, Nathaniel Hawthorne?
Yeah, Nathaniel Hawthorne. He's a proud assassin during this time. They're all Templars.
Right.
If you
right.
sink, you're a Templar. If you come back up, you're a Templar.
It makes sense to me.
Yeah, exactly.
So
No, there are tons of different historical time periods and things you could do. And I mean, hey, it's Ubisoft. For all we know, they're going to put the next Assassin's Creed on Mars like they did with Far Cry.
right.
We don't know. So let us know what you think in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on all of this? What historical time period would you like to see the most? Do you have any that we didn't mention? Because we are thinking about making another video like this in the future. Very interested in what you have to say. Be sure to leave a like if you enjoyed this. Subscribe for more content. We appreciate you very, very much. Have a fantastic day. And as always, everyone, stay shui. And hey, be sure to check out the secondary Let's Play channel, Degenerate Plays, where we just played through Assassin's Creed 2 and had a fantastic time.